Next on Unsolved Mysteries. A 14-year-old boy disappears from a county fair. Some believe that he was killed by local teenagers. Is our destiny written in the stars? A leading astrologer reveals that serial killers might be born to murder. Angela Maher was a crusader against drunk drivers until she was killed by one. Now that driver is a fugitive on the run. And 9 brothers and sisters are separated when their mother is killed. Maybe you can help reunite them. Sounds intriguing, doesn't it? Well, stick around. I'm Dennis Farina, and for the next hour, it's Unsolved Mysteries. In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Jeffrey Dahmer lured at least 17 young men to his apartment. He drugged, strangled, and dismembered each of them in a real-life chamber of horrors. In Los Angeles, the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, invaded homes and murdered at least 13 people, most of them women. In New York City, David Berkowitz called himself the Son of Sam, and he made Manhattan his personal hunting ground. He randomly shot 13 people, leaving 6 of them dead. What forces compel these notorious serial killers to act? Is it nature or nurture? Or could their destiny be written in the stars?
Astrology is like a road map where the planets were positioned at the exact moment you were born. Astrology is the science of celestial bodies in relationship to an infant, and then it progresses through their life.
For most of us, astrology is just a playful diversion in the morning newspaper, something to be enjoyed, but not taken too seriously. But others swear by it. Perhaps there is something more to this study of the stars. We asked astrologer Carolyn Reynolds to examine the charts of 19 different people. She had no idea who they belonged to. However, we knew that 4 of them were the birth dates of notorious serial killers. Would Carolyn be able to spot which charts belong to the killers? Astrological charts divide the sky into 12 sections called houses. Each represents a facet of life. For example, the 4th house is home or family. The 8th house is death. The chart is based on the position of the planets, sun, and moon at the moment a person is born. According to astrologists, these positions have specific meaning, and they strongly influence the person born at that specific time. When astrologist Carolyn Reynolds sat down to study the 19 charts, she was given no identifying information beyond date, time, and place of birth. Out of the 19 charts, Carolyn selected Dahmer, Ramirez, Berkowitz, and Edmund Kemper as probable serial killers.
If you look at charts, there's a certain beauty and harmony where they flow. And theirs were jumbled and knotted, and all their planets were just bumping up against each other, causing friction and trouble.
In each case, Carolyn was never told which chart belonged to which subject. Even so, she was able to talk about specific details relating to the killer's crimes. Details that proved to be remarkably accurate. For instance, in 1988, Richard Ramirez pleaded guilty to murder. He reportedly bragged to a fellow inmate, quote, "I've killed 20 people. I love all that blood."
This was the most obvious killer. He has, in the 3rd house, the sun and the moon in the sign of Pisces. He had 5 out of 7 of the worst degrees that you could have, and one of them was the degree of the devil.
Hail Satan.
During his trial, Richard Ramirez openly admitted to worshiping Satan. He proudly displayed a pentagram, a sign of the devil on the palm of his left hand. Then there's David Berkowitz, son of Sam. When he was arrested, he claimed that he was instructed to kill by a neighbor's dog. He said he had no control over his own actions. Without knowing that she was reading Berkowitz's chart, Carolyn came to the same conclusion.
I don't think he had much of a choice in this. He was born with the planets that gave you a potential in the lineup for multiple personality or a split personality. And it's in the house of death.
When Carolyn read Jeffrey Dahmer's chart, she found the subject to be, quote, destructive, heartless, and cruel. Carolyn concluded that if he wasn't so evil, he would be a murder victim himself. And that's exactly what happened to Jeffrey Dahmer. In 1994, he was beaten to death in prison.
I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother...
Mass murderer Edmund Kemper's chart was perhaps the most revealing of all, mostly in the 4th house, which represents parents and home. Again, Carolyn did not know whose chart she was analyzing.
There's a lot of activity at home, and it's all unusual and not good. Automatically, I'm thinking something's not right here about what he's doing at home. The position of the moon is pretty much working against that house.
In astrology, the moon is a symbol for mother. Edmund Kemper murdered 8 women, 6 co-eds, his mother's best friend, and his mother. Criminal psychologist Candace Scrappick is familiar with Kemper's case.
It's clear that there was a very tumultuous relationship between Ed and his mother. From a young child, he had fantasized killing her. The 6 young women that he chose, consciously, he says, were women that represented women whom his mother had said he was not good enough for.
Scrappick has interviewed a dozen serial killers. She believes that they are products of both their environment and their biology.
That is like a Mars to a Saturn or a Mercury.
While Scrappick does not adhere to astrology, she does find Carolyn Reynolds' observations intriguing. We brought the 2 of them together to compare notes.
It's interesting. There are certain concepts that certainly I'm relating to in this particular case. I'm most interested in trying to come to a better understanding of why it is serial murderers do what they do. Psychologically, of course, and as a psychologist, that's probably my bias. I hope you can understand where I'm coming from in this. The truth is, I honestly don't know if there's any value to astrology. I don't dismiss it, I don't discount it as a valid factor in human behavior. I just really cannot say one way or the other.
Are certain people destined to kill the moment they are born? Or is it possible to reverse what astrologist Carolyn Reynolds believes is written in the stars?
The stars incline, they do not impel. I think love, for example, transcends everything. I think if a person had a real strong, nurturing, loving mother and father, relationships around them, that it might help them not to act in the negative fashion. It's a roadmap, and like any other roadmap, sometimes you take a different route. I think it's a lot like that.
Next, a 14-year-old boy is last seen at a carnival, and his parents desperately want to know why he never came home. Myrtle Point, Oregon. Every August, the Coos County Fair rolls into town. For many, it's a week-long party. To Jeremy Bright and his close friend Johnny, it was one of the high points of the year. Normally, Jeremy lived 100 miles away in Grants Pass, where his mother worked. But during the week of the fair, he and his younger sister stayed with their stepfather in Myrtle Point. On Thursday, Jeremy and Johnny hung out at the fair. That afternoon, Jeremy phoned his mother, Diane. He told her that he was having a great time. Diane says that she made plans with Jeremy. In 2 days, she would come down to Myrtle Point and pick him up. 5 hours later, on Thursday night, Jeremy showed up at a local tavern owned by his grandmother. There, he met his stepfather and asked to borrow some money. It would be the last time Jeremy was ever seen by his family.
You behave yourself.
Since that weekend, a number of rumors have surfaced about Jeremy's disappearance. His parents and the police have come to one conclusion. Someone in Myrtle Point knows exactly what happened to Jeremy, and they're not talking. Diane arrived in Myrtle Point on Saturday as planned. But when she went to pick up Jeremy at his stepfather's house, he wasn't there.
I went in, and on the TV set was his house keys from our Grants Pass apartment, and his wallet, and his new watch that he had told me he'd bought. I knew when I found those things that he was around somewhere, because he wouldn't leave without them.
A few hours later that same night, Diane was worried enough to contact the police. At first, they believed her son had simply run away.
He did like the fair. There was the thought that perhaps he was hiding out, intending to leave with the fair people, and I've explored that possibility in every way that I can think of. However, in this particular case, I've talked to family members and friends of his that knew him well, and he was just not, from what I can learn, the type of a kid who would have struck out on his own.
On Sunday, the fair closed down. Myrtle Point was buzzing about Jeremy's disappearance, and gradually, conflicting stories began to emerge. According to one rumor, Jeremy went to one of Myrtle Point's many parties and drank a beer laced with a powerful drug.
Hey, we're looking for a beer?
Hey, don't open another one. There's one already open right here.
I've identified at least 2 and perhaps 3 parties where Jeremy was present that the overdose theory could have occurred at. It was reported that Jeremy had a heart murmur, and therefore a stimulant of some kind might have done some bodily damage to him just by his sheer taking it.
Police heard a different story from a jailhouse informant. He claimed that 3 teenagers showed up at a local swimming hole and harassed Jeremy and his friends.
Is that a gun?
This? It's a toy.
It was at the jail where an inmate related to me the information that he had heard wherein one individual from the Myrtle Point area was target practicing or shooting indiscriminately in the water in the area where Jeremy was swimming.
Show me what you're made of now.
That's better. Here's the deer. Yeah, I bet you can.
You think so?
Yeah, see if you can get it.
All right, I'm gonna try this.
You look good in it.
They subsequently took him to a cabin, maybe within 10 miles of the Myrtle Point area, and attempted to nurse him back to health, to no avail, that he died as a result of that injury, either from loss of blood or from infection or what have you. That same source through the jail indicated that his body would be found within 200 feet of this cabin in a shallow grave.
Police searched the area around the cabin, but found nothing.
All the rumors were hard to handle. All of them are hard to think about. Every time I'd hear a new one, I'd have nightmares for a week or so. The one that I hope is not what happened is the one where he suffered for 2 weeks before he died. and they buried his body. Because the thought of him suffering for 2 weeks just makes me sick.
There were 2 more strange events the night that Jeremy disappeared. First, a sister of Jeremy's friend Johnny had a disturbing encounter.
It was Friday night of the fair, and it was between midnight and 1 when we were leaving my sister's apartment. And we came down the stairs, and we got to the last stair, and we almost ran into one of the neighborhood guys, and he was completely covered in blood, and I mean, it was just all over him, and it kind of scared me. What happened to you?
Well, this?
He goes, oh, this happened hours ago, and he just laughed, and then he went into one of the apartments.
A half hour later, Johnny arrived at his sister's apartment. According to her, he was visibly upset, but refused to explain why.
Whether it is just coincidence or whether they're directly related to Jeremy's disappearance is another one of the mysteries that you still have to sort through to try to determine what indeed did happen.
The 3 or 4 people whose names keep reappearing in all the rumors and all of the reports, they're not exactly what anybody would call pillars of society. But as long as these men are out on the street, they can hurt somebody else's child the same as they hurt mine. And if they did to my son what people are saying they did and what they've been heard themselves say that they did, they've got no business on the public streets.
I would just encourage anyone, especially those people who I feel have information that would help this investigation greatly, to just simply have the courage to say, yeah, I'm scared to death, but in a case like this, my being scared doesn't warrant this family's pain.
This age-progressed photo shows what Jeremy might look like today. He has scars on his forehead and nose and a mole on his chin. The prime suspect in his disappearance recently died in prison, and there are no new leads. However, the case is still open. If you have any information about the disappearance of Jeremy Bright, please log on to our website at Unsolved.com. Next, meet 3 American children who seem to channel the thoughts of the dead. Reincarnation has never been scientifically proven, yet the belief has persisted for thousands of years. Among the most fascinating accounts are those involving children, ordinary kids who seem to have information they are either too young to know or to understand. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On the 4th of July, Carol Bauman was watching fireworks with her 5-year-old son, Chase, when he suddenly became very frightened.
Not only terrified, he was hysterical. He was crying and screaming, and I had to take him home. And I thought that was very unusual because he had never responded to fireworks that way before.
Over the next few months, Chase's fear of explosive noises intensified.
All right, Chase, I want to try something. Close your eyes and relax.
For help, Carol turned to a friend who was a hypnotherapist.
Breathe out slowly. Now, I want you to think of a sound that frightens you.
The hypnotherapist had hardly begun when Chase suddenly seemed transported to another place and another time. A battlefield during the American Civil War.
There's lots of smoke. There's a war going on.
Well, I was shocked. He started curling up in my lap as if he were afraid, and I could feel him trembling as he described what it was like with gunfire all around him and what it was like to be crouching behind a rock. I could feel him crouching in my lap.
Chase experienced a rush of vivid images. He saw himself in the heat of battle. Struck by a bullet, his wrist shattered. Soldiers dragged him to a field hospital. The wound was bandaged, and he was sent back to the front line and served in a cannon crew.
Chase said he saw himself walking back into battle, and he was killed behind the cannon. He died very suddenly. I was amazed because it sounded so true and so real and so plausible.
I'm looking down on a valley.
At that point in Chase's life, when he was 5, I knew what he watched on television because we carefully regulated it. He watched Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers, period. And I never had read books to him about the Civil War. As far as I could tell, there was no way he could have known that.
Chase later drew his memory of the cannon that he helped load. Civil War buffs have found the details surprisingly accurate.
In my opinion, it's rather remarkable that the child, having not had any sort of background or experience in viewing scenes from the Civil War, his placement of the horse and the wagon and the artillery piece is pretty consistent with the mode of transportation of cannon during the Civil War.
Carol Bauman is a professional writer. She was so intrigued by her son's experience, she started researching a book on children's past lives. As it turned out, there was plenty of material.
At the time, Leah was a little over 2. She was about 2.5 years old, and we were driving near our home. It was wintertime. She was about 2.5. She was in the back seat in her car seat, where she always was. And we were driving down a hill, and the sun was shining, and all of a sudden, I hear this little voice in the back seat pipes up. She goes, "Mommy, this is just like where I died." What? I was a little shocked, I'm thinking, what is she talking about? I was a little horrified that she's even thinking about death at that age. And it shook me enough that I pulled off the road.
Sweetie, what did you just say?
I was driving in the car, it fell off the bridge, and I was in the water.
There was a feeling that came over me of this was really important, that this is big news, like the basement is on fire, kind of something that you really want to pay attention to, and that it was a different moment from any conversation that we had had previously.
Well, who drove the car?
I was big, I could reach the house, I was driving.
She said that basically she fell off the bridge and she fell into the water, and she said, I fell out of the car. I could feel the rocks on my head, and I could look up and see the bubbles going up. And she said I could see the light on the shiny bridge. I don't think she could have possibly made it up. She didn't watch any television. She didn't really go to any movies. She wasn't exposed. She could not have possibly had a frame of reference for this experience.
My son Blake taught me a very spiritual lesson that we have lived before and will probably live again. And I've got no doubt that this is what happened.
Blake, what's the matter?
Colleen Hawkins' son, Blake, was only 3 years old when he told his mother a frightening story.
Who hit you with the truck?
A man.
A man hit you with a truck? Were you outside?
I thought that I would trick him in a way to see if he had his facts right. And so I said, "Oh, this happened on TV, right?" And he said, "No, it happened in the street." He was getting irritated with me at this point because he knew his facts and he felt I should know what happened also.
Some experts believe there's a perfectly rational explanation for all of these episodes.
All kids fantasize to a certain degree, and so the chances that they'll come up with something startling and unusual in that kind of a rich fantasy life is very high.
I got hit by
And when you look at it that way, these cases fall apart. There are lots of prosaic explanations for how they could possibly know this information without it necessarily coming from a past life.
However, the parents of the children involved are convinced those memories are not only real, but are also beneficial.
I believe that remembering past lives can be very healing for the child. It can help them leave the past behind and move on into present reality. And I think it can be marvelously healing for the adults too. It can give them new insights into who their child is as a soul, and will give them a completely different perspective on life and death.
Next, 2 women swap ID cards in the hospital, and one takes the other's baby. And now that baby is grown up, and she wants to find her birth mother. In a previous episode, we told you the story of Carla Downing. Carla grew up in a happy, close-knit family, but never felt that she fit in.
The whole time I was growing up, I always knew that there was just something not right, mainly because of the difference between my brother and I. He had blue eyes and blonde hair, and it was curly, and, I had straight, dark hair, dark eyes, olive complexion. It was just obvious to me, even, that we just weren't alike.
It was not until her father's death that Carla finally got some answers.
This belonged to your dad, and he wanted you to have it.
In her father's briefcase, she found documents which proved that the father and mother who raised her were not her natural parents. Carla learned that the year that she was born, her mother, Mildred Graham, had met a young woman named Mary. An immigrant from Belgium, Mary was single and pregnant and knew that she couldn't care for a child. So, the two women switched ID cards in the hospital.
Her name is Mildred Graham.
In doing the switch, Mildred's name was listed on the birth certificate as Carla's mother, and soon after the birth, Mary just disappeared.
I just have this need to find Mary. I want to be in the same room with someone I resemble. I want my mother. I want somebody that I've been looking for a long time.
Update. On the night of our broadcast, Carla found Mary. She rushed to Maryland to meet her mother and her extended family, including her two sisters and a nephew.
I seen it come. I knew it was her. I couldn't believe it. And all I could say was, Carla, oh, Carla. And I ran out the door, and she almost fell out the car, I think. And we couldn't do nothing else but hold each other and cry.
When I saw her for the first time, I just can't describe that feeling. It's home at last. I can breathe again. It's just the happiest moment in my whole life, just the happiest moment in my whole life.
This is your grandfather and your grandmother, and it's like a miracle. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it for the longest time. I said, this is not happening to us. It only happens to other people that they find somebody they're looking for, not us. But yet it happened to us.
When I found out that my mom was alive and healthy and okay, that was just the best news in the world. But then the extra bonus was I have two sisters and a nephew, so it's a happy ending. It's a fairy tale come true.
Thanks to our Unsolved Mysteries viewers, Carla is now getting to know her mother, her two half-sisters, and their families. She calls the whole experience a fairy tale come true. Scottsdale, Arizona.
Thanks.
21-year-old Angela Maher was home from college to celebrate her mother's birthday. On Friday night, she told her mother that she had to pick up a friend who needed a ride. Around that same time, 31-year-old Gloria Schulz was leaving a local bar. Schulz had been drinking.
There was a knock at the door. It was the police officers. And they said that there had been an accident. And my question was my daughter okay? And they said no.
Angela had suffered massive blood force trauma to her head. By the time paramedics were able to cut her out of the car, it was too late. Gloria Schulz survived. She had a broken jaw, but she was still able to answer questions.
Ma'am, have you had anything to drink tonight?
Yeah, obviously too much.
Tests later revealed traces of marijuana in Schulz's system and a blood alcohol content of 0.15, nearly double the legal limit. The tragic irony of Angela's death is that she was active in the crusade against driving and drinking. She had even helped establish a chapter of Students Against Drunk Driving.
Being involved with SAD means that you just care enough to be a really good friend. If any of you ever got into a situation where you needed a ride home, you could just give me a call and I would come and get you, no questions asked. You're probably wondering why you're holding these balloons. Well, if everyone that has a black balloon could go ahead and release it. These balloons signify the number of people that were killed in drunk driving accidents in Arizona last year. By releasing this white balloon, it signifies hope that this will never happen to one of us.
What's really an awful irony is that the night that my sister was hit, she was on her way to pick up a friend who had called from a bar here in Phoenix for a ride home. My sister felt strongly enough that, if she knew she was going out with friends and that they were going to drink, she would not drink so she could drive everybody home and make sure that everybody got home safe and sound.
She always wanted to be the designated driver. That's why she would always take our car. And she'd always just answer us by saying, "Mother, I want to make sure I get home."
Your Honor, it is the state's position that a bond should be set in this matter in an amount...
Gloria Schulz was arraigned on charges of manslaughter and reckless endangerment. Schulz was represented by a prominent attorney experienced in handling drunk driving cases.
She wasn't arraigned until 4.5 weeks after the accident. She's never spent a day in jail. She kept her driver's license. She went on every day like nothing happened.
At this point, Ms. Schulz, I'm going to release you under the supervision of the Pretrial Services Agency of this court, and this will include drug monitoring.
To the Maher's dismay, Gloria Schulz was released without being required to post bond. The judge did stipulate, however, that Schulz submit to drug testing 3 times a week and that she report to the court by phone once a week.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we be excused?
Yes.
It was the beginning of months of frustration for Angela's family. Gloria's attorney received 6 trial postponements. Schulz was allowed to leave the state on 3 different occasions, despite the prosecutor's objections. More than a year after Angela's death, a pretrial hearing was finally scheduled.
When I didn't see her sitting in the courtroom, all I could think of was, where was she? Had she skipped? We discovered that she had missed 6 drug testings.
I need to talk with you out in the hall. The fact that Gloria Schulz ran definitely affected my mother and I. The healing that goes along with grieving and mourning somebody you love, it just hasn't happened. There's no closure.
Hi. Congeniality.
She was bubbly, friendly, full of life and vitality, and always smiling. I had a young lady that was polished and educated, personable, and loved life, and this woman took that away. Not only from me, but from everybody else who touched Angela's life.
Gloria Schulz is wanted for manslaughter. She is 5 feet 5 inches tall, and when last seen weighed 115 pounds. She has red hair and green eyes. If you have any information, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Next, a woman's search for her brothers and sisters who were sent to different families after their mother was murdered. Toledo, Ohio. After being married for 17 years, Wanda Vest and her husband James had 9 children, 6 boys and 3 girls. For the children, life was predictable and secure.
We would eat dinner every night together at the table.
My mother would have everything done before my father got off work. My mother sat at one end, my father sat at the other end, and the kids sat on the sides. And I think that was something that was really important to my father, you know, that the family be together at dinner time and sit there and eat. We would go to church on Sundays. We would get up on the stage of the church and sing with my mother because she played the accordion. We would sing at home together. We would have fun. It was typical American family life that you see on Leave It to Beaver.
But there was a dark side to this cozy family life. James was a heavy drinker. More and more often, he was too drunk to work. Gradually, family dinners were replaced by family confrontations.
I remember on one occasion, my father coming home looking for his bottle of liquor, and my mother had hid it, so he couldn't find it.
No, I didn't. You hid that bottle, Wanda?
You probably drank it.
I didn't drink the bottle. It was a full bottle this morning. Where the hell is it?
And he got really upset and wanted his liquor, and when my mother wouldn't give it to him, he was beating her up. And he was hitting her and choking her. And so my brothers would go over there and try to get him off of her. I was always more quiet and afraid.
Wanda finally had enough abuse. She insisted that James move out of the house and then filed for divorce. Wanda had little work experience, so the best that she could do to support her 9 children was to wait tables and to tend bar at a local tavern. Late one night, James staggered into that tavern where Wanda worked. It was only her 34th birthday. According to witnesses, James had been drinking heavily.
Get out of here!
What are you doing? Put the thing down. Put the gun down, Jim. Put it down! Put the gun down!
1 hour later, James was arrested at a nearby tavern. Minutes after killing Wanda, he had swaggered in and announced that he had just shot his wife and needed a drink. He later pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. He died there 9 years later.
I think I felt more cheated than anything. I remember my little sister tried to touch my mother, and I pulled her hand back. And then she went up there, and I guess she touched her because she came back, and she goes, "Sissy, why is Mama so cold?" And I couldn't answer her. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat her down on my lap and just held her there.
Now prepare us.
In one violent moment, James Vest had destroyed his entire family.
The Lord is
Within days of their mother's funeral, the Vest children were sent to live in separate homes.
I think for some reason I felt we had enough family that some kind of way we would all be kept together, but I was wrong. It was like nobody wanted us. We were taboo, you know. To be around us would be to remember what happened, to have to accept it, and they didn't want that. So to me, we were punished for what my father did because we weren't even allowed to have each other.
The oldest boy, James Jr., was taken in by his grandmother. Shireen and her brothers Russell, Kenneth, and Wayne were placed in foster homes. Her sister Kendra and the 3 youngest children, Heath, Dawn, and Kevin, were put up for adoption.
Excuse me, do you have any spare change?
Shireen was just 14 years old.
Thank
The
you.
loss of her family marked the beginning of a cycle of despair. 3 months after her mother was murdered, Shireen ran away from her foster home.
Sometimes I would sleep in the apartment building hallways, and a couple times I slept outside. It was cold, I was scared. I had a backpack that had some clothes in it. I used that for a pillow. You lay there and halfway sleep and hope that no one comes around.
Eventually, Shireen managed to escape the streets. She went to business school, found a job, and got married. With the love and encouragement of her new family, Shireen began to search for her missing brothers and sisters that she had not seen in 11 years. It took Shireen less than 2 months to find 4 of her brothers. 2 years later, she was reunited with her oldest sister, and then finally made contact with her youngest sister and brother. But Shireen is still looking for one of the Vest children, her brother Heath. He was just 6 years old when the family was separated.
I actually had a dream one night that there was all 9 of us in a room, and I was actually going, Jimmy, counting them all down the line, and I couldn't believe it. It's like something that you want, but it's just out of reach. You'll never get it. But I will not take no for an answer. I just know that I'm going to get them all together.
Update. Shireen's dream of finding her brother finally came true. Heath was watching our broadcast in Ohio and quickly flew in for a reunion with 5 of his siblings. They hadn't seen each other in over 17 years.
I was really excited. I just wanted to get out of the car. I was thinking, who am I going to hug first, And I didn't want anybody to start bawling or anything, I just wanted to get out and hug everybody at once, basically.
When I heard Heath was found, I was actually kind of numb. I thought it would take months. I didn't know that people would just call in and it would be that easy. I'm glad it was, because it's been a long wait.
Meeting everybody, it's changed my attitude a lot. It's picked up my attitude because I had that unwanted feeling, and I never really knew why. But now since they found me, I have that wanted feeling now, and it's a good feeling because I never really knew.
Finding Heath and this reunion is the first day of a new beginning. I know when we all leave here that we're all going to leave here differently. It's going to be better for all of us.
Happily for Shireen and her siblings, this case has been solved. But if you have any information about any of the other stories in this program, please log on to our website at Unsolved.